different videos on the channel already about prioritizing and ways to approach things, but I wanted to really explore the idea of having an action plan. This isn't like, I feel like some people would say, oh, well, you were probably a good student. Like, look at what you do. And you obviously wouldn't need that kind of stuff. But that's absolutely not true. Being a good student isn't about having lots and lots of time and all the support in the world and being able to complete every single assignment on time. All those things are great supports, but in the real world, things happen, and not every subject is our subject. And so there are strategies, there are plans, and I feel like being a good student is about strategies. It's about figuring out what works for you in general, what works for you with a course, and it's about things like having an action plan. Ideally, hooray, we would be able to just have time to work on every assignment, but we don't always have that. And so I want you to have these examples, not just for our course, so I'll go back a slide, not just for our course, but for all courses, because these are things that you can still do. So I want to show you those steps and make sure you have a video to review. And of course, you are always welcome to send me a message and have me help you. I'm more than happy to do that. So through the YouTube channel or because you have my email. Please don't hesitate to do that. I'm here for it. It took time for me to figure these things out for myself, and so that's why I want to share them with you. So having an action plan to me is really special because it lets us consider all the possible outcomes, all the obstacles, and weigh out what our best steps could be. So I want to walk through reviewing our gradebook and seeing sort of what the pieces are and where to go with it. I want us to look at point values because that's going to be a big indicator of where things should go in our list of what to tackle. But also I want us to talk about time and communication because those two can be a really big thing. So let's get going. Review the gradebook. So what have you missed? Maybe you thought you completed something, or this happens at least once every term. Someone is sure they submitted an assignment, but it ends up, something went wrong in the cyber world and they didn't end up submitting an assignment. That's just going to happen. Life is going to happen. So make sure you're checking for all those things. You could also have missed something that is in a particular assignment. So look for a grade that is surprising. Maybe you thought you completed something, but you missed a specific question. 10 points on the gradebook rubric. I can't give you those points if it's missing. So look for feedback that says, hey, what about this? What about that? I also try to catch everyone. I do not succeed, but I try to catch you also in, say, a discussion board and say, hey, what about this particular question? What would you say about that? But you can always go back and look at what you have just completely missed, what didn't go through, or what is incomplete. Also, check for errors. There are, as I always like to phrase it, lots of buttons to punch. Obviously, I don't want to miss those, and I work really hard on that because I don't want you to get surprises, but it can happen. There are times when I type a 3 instead of a 30. Obviously, I don't want to leave it that way, and I try to check for those things, but check for errors and communicate all of that. Ask your instructor questions, get support. There are plenty of times where a student will say, hey, well, you said this, but I felt like that answered the question, or why did you do that? And I love those conversations because I'm not always right, and it gives me a way to really connect with all of you and see how I can do a better job. So reach out with questions. So now we're there. We have seen what's missing, what's incomplete, and we start to assess. So we start looking at the points. That's a great place to start. So here's some examples. What if you didn't do a discussion board that's worth 40 points? So you have 0. What if you did, in half of an assignment worth 200 points? So you started your IntelliPath, you've done a good job. You have 112 out of 200. What about this discussion board? The person missed part of an answer and then didn't have peer responses. So there are incomplete elements here. Or this IntelliPath, because it started, but they haven't had a chance to finish it. So it's 82 points out of 200. Well, it's not just about looking at this and going, well, that was Unit 1, that's Unit 3, so I'm just going to start in Unit 1 and work my way through. No, I want you to think about points, and I don't want you to just glance at that because that's a little confusing. I want you to reorder them by looking at how many points are available. So this one moves to the bottom because it only has 23 possible points available. This one is just a little bit up from the bottom because there are 40 possible points available. But this one moved to the top because, as you see in our chart, there are possible 117 points. Obviously, when we get to things where it's like 60 to 55 points or something like that, they're really close, and we can make our own judgment call at that point in time. But we really want to check out those point values and put our time where it's going to matter most. So that's the next part, communication. We often talk about this part, communicating with other people. Talk to staff, talk to faculty, see what ideas and options they have, what policies and procedures and protocols are in place to support you. But communicate with yourself. I tend to say, well, you can do it. You can do all of it. You've got to do all of it. But that's not true. And it doesn't help me to do that kind of thing. It means that I'm not communicating effectively with myself and that I set myself up for failure. So that's been a big learning step for me in this world of working and going to school, is that I have to be willing to communicate with myself. So what kind of time do you have available? If you are absolutely exhausted, you could spend 2 hours working on something and not get very far with it. Maybe resting, taking a cat nap, setting 5 alarms, will get you that little doze time that you need, and then a half hour means that you are working way better than you expected. These are not quick, simple, easy things to explore and learn about yourself. I have definitely, had my ups and downs with all of it, but I really want you to think about that maybe you aren't going to have time to rest. But what can you do when you're tired? I tend to choose specific tasks for when I'm more awake or prepared, for when I know I'm going to be tired. All of those kinds of things are sort of learning yourself and figuring out what's going to work for you. So let's go explore some samples. I have quite a few because I want to look at all of these people. Before I head off, I do want to talk about policies and protocols. We have things like incompletes, where you get an extra 5 days to complete a course. However, what that means is that when our course ends on a Thursday, you have until the next course and into the next course to finish those assignments. Is that setting you up for success or failure? I find that I have a lot of conversations. I'm always willing to give a student an incomplete, but I do have conversations with each of you first because maybe you need that weekend. Maybe just sort of the exhaustion is catching up with you, and you need Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday off. And so you really have to ask those questions hard. And I know it's also really difficult because money comes into this as well, and we don't want to fail a course and repay for it. So all of these are things to talk about. I'm more than happy to have those conversations with you and help you find the best path forward for you in your situation. So now let's look at these. I've taken some gradebook images from a previous course to say, hey, what could these things look like? And so I'm showing you the current grade and the points they have out of the total available at this time. You'll see that these are yellow. That means we've passed them, and that we are now into Unit 4. So we're starting to look at it and we're saying, okay, I have, Unit 4 to work on in Unit 5. What kind of time frame do I have left to make these choices and find these opportunities? And where should I start? So first, we're going to look for points. So we look in and we create our list and we say, okay, well, these things are available to either work on or increase our score. So we write those down and we evaluate the points. So if we haven't done the Unit 2 in telepath, that means there are 200 points available for us. If we've started it and we are doing good in Unit 1 and we just need to revise, that is also going to be some points. So you'll see that I've done those 2 steps that we did over here. We have our list, and then I've ordered it based on how many points we have to earn. So they're not in order of like 1, 2, 3, 4. Instead, we're saying, where can my best points come from? So as you can see here, it's unit 2 and 3. Then we go back to unit 1 and then 2 and 3 for the discussion boards. Some things I want you to think about. 1, you don't have to do everything in a class. Sometimes we have to make that call. Obviously, it's great if we can. Everything dovetails together to create the best possible picture, but life happens. We don't have to finish absolutely everything. So be strategic. Look for the highest point values and go from there. Don't also look at this as, well, I have to finish all of these or else. Start somewhere. Start and see what that change looks like. So for instance, do unit 2. See what happens with that. See what that grade change looks like. That is a great way to get encouragement and to see how you're rising in terms of all of these numbers. There are different ways to calculate all of these, but it's more complicated. I don't want you thinking about all that. So instead, just focus on looking for those big points and getting one thing off the list and seeing where it goes from there. As I point out here, maybe you're working on units 2 and 3, you're doing so much in telepath, and you're just getting tired. Sometimes I encourage students to do a different kind of assignment so that you're still getting points, but that you're breaking up that sort of structure. It can get exhausting to do, every discussion board in a row. So to give yourself a mental break, you may want to do a telepath and then a discussion board. But based on your list, you know where to get the most points for those. There are so many factors. So while I'm showing you lots of options, I also want you to be ready to reach out and ask me questions as we explore your particular examples. So this person has a D+. They're right there on the cusp of getting that C, and you'll see that they've done something in most of these assignments. So what's available could be Unit 3 in telepath that has the most possible points, because you'll see that that one's an F. So that's a great one to get started with. Unit 1 in telepath is another great place because there are 87 possible points to get into. And of course, we're talking about how many points, but how many of us get perfect scores? Those don't always happen. So maybe we want to tackle units 3 and then maybe unit 1 and then maybe look for some extra credit. Or we want to evaluate just moving forward with the course. So if we did unit 3 and then we kept moving forward with the course, we could probably do really well. So play with those things and see where it goes. One step at a time, then reach out and say, hey, I've been working in unit 3. Could you import those in telepath grades so I can see what my new overall grade is? Use that as a marker to encourage yourself. Honestly, I think this person could just do unit 3 and then keep up with the next 2 units and they would have a C and they would be doing great. What if you're doing great? You have a C, you're passing, it's all good. Well, you can still do this. You can still say, well, how could I do better? How could I evaluate? So in this case, units 2 and 3 in telepath would, we're looking at almost half the points. So revising those units would be a great step, but what is the most important step? Maybe it would just be continuing to move through the course. And then Unit 5 for us doesn't have a discussion board. We don't have quite as much material to cover. So maybe in Unit 5 they could say, okay, well, I kept moving. I did Unit 4. I did Unit 5. Now I'm going to go make that list. It's a different set of criteria depending on what grade you have and what grade you want and what is available in terms of time and points. Even a C+, we would do the same thing. We would say, hey, look, I could go into that in telepath, but in telepath, is that going to give us 100 points every time? Probably not. Like a 95 is a great grade for in telepath. So the more assured points would be our discussion board. So maybe the best steps for success would be continuing to move forward and looking at that discussion board. Again, we're looking for how many points are available and what our best bet is for getting all of them. And in this case, because they're so close, we are more assured of our discussion board points than we are of our in telepath ones. And again, look for those quieter times. Maybe a particular unit has a little extra time. For us, that's Unit 5 because we only have the one assignment. So it's a good time to catch those later missing pieces. Even with a B plus, you could say, but I want an A. So how would I get there? A, most important, I'd move forward. Just by being consistent with units 4 and 5, you're probably going to be in that range. But just to double check, why did Unit 2 come out a little lower? It looks like there's something incomplete. So we would go back and we would say, did I do peer responses? Did I miss a question in the main post? And then we could fix that one up, and by completing the work at the same scale that they're working at now, they would definitely have that A. Even when we have an A, we just want to check things out. Could I increase grading somewhere? With these great numbers in IntelliPath, they may not be able to go any higher. They're doing a great job keeping up with extra credit. And again, it's just continuing to do good work and double checking, because you just never know where things could go missing or something could happen. As I mentioned to each student who reaches out, I don't always catch chat extra credits, so I greatly appreciate it if you say, hey, didn't I was there for unit 2, wasn't like, am I imagining things? And then you help me out and I find the links and the information to make sure I put it in there. So again, you're checking to make sure that you've done it well and that I've done it well, and then we are communicating. So I want you to keep track of this, because there are all these different reasons to review your gradebook. Just even if you're doing great, you want to check that gradebook to look for missing things, incomplete things, or errors. The next thing you want to look at are your points to see that you have, you're looking at the highest output, the highest reward areas, and you are assessing time. We do not have to do absolutely everything in a class. We want to, because we want to get everything out of a class, but we are adults, and adults have to make hard choices and tough decisions, and sometimes that means we have to let certain elements go, and we can still do great. It's just about being strategic and looking at what's happening. So, as always, if you have questions about this for your particular gradebook, do not hesitate to send me a message and make me help you.